Hello and welcome
yeah.
to So Much Game. yeah, we're live. So Much Game with Sunday Night Natters. Continuing the revolutionary theme of adding Nye's name to everything.
I just saw that. I didn't even read the promo. I've just realised that. Oh god. It kind of looks like I'm Russian trying to say Niet.
Yeah, that's why I put a hyphen in between it, because I thought if I just just add a T to the end of it, that's just Sunday Nye-t Natters. Well, I think I'll let Nye introduce himself and what we're doing.
Hello there. I'm Nye, and today we're doing something different from the usual streams. We are doing kind of I guess you could call it like a quiz, but not really. It's a bit like 8 out of 10 cats or QI, where the points don't matter, and if I make up some points at the end, that'll be sufficient. It's more just about having fun and talking about history, because we have a means to a history podcast. We have a means to talk military history, and we are actually working on something, but that's hush hush secret. However, we are consummate amateur professional historians. So but I should note we don't have a history degree. But so we're doing our research and we wanted to have it all together before we presented it. So this is an improv one because we have 10 vehicles, which I want to talk about, but are too short to be given a whole podcast devoted to. And I thought we could do a little quiz. And I'll do all my who I am stuff at the end, because I always think that's just better.
Yeah.
So I shall go over the rules in the loosest sense.
There are rules? Oh god, now I feel even worse.
Well, there are rules in the sense... No, it's rules for me. So I have some things... So I have to tell you some stuff up front. So first off, as I was telling you in the green room, I guess blue since my wall's blue, most of the vehicles here are either non-combative or never saw combative services, and only, I want to say, 2 of them actually, had people shooting at them and they were shooting back. Okay. Second, only 2 of them are Axis-based, so we don't have any weird German Wunderwaffe. It's all mostly allies kind of stuff, or the Comintern. And the other thing, the really important one, is most of these things are, yes, indeed, prototypes or weird things that they made, but then the purpose of it changed or never came to fruition. That all being said, they are all interesting. They all have a little story to them. And I like to think in the context of the World Wars, they all have this kind of little bit. Also, only one of them is from the First World War. The rest, the other 9, are from the Second World War.
I erroneously assumed they were all going to be from the First World War.
It's okay. It's my fault, because when I sent you the thing, I put World War One and World War Two right next to each other, so it looked like it was a more equal thing. Because I thought I could find tons of World War One vehicles, I couldn't, or at least not ones that I didn't want to talk about for much longer than 10 minutes. Because I will make this clear: most of these are, that's an interesting thing, and I'm probably going to talk more about the history of the time it's set in rather than it itself. Because I'm not a big specs guy. I'm not going to be like, yes, it had 8 millimeters of armor. I'm not going to do that to everyone, because we all have lives, and it's more fun listening to the bigger picture than it is talking about specs. So, unless you want to say anything else, we could just jump right in if you want.
I wish to apologise beforehand to everyone at home who will know every single one of these, for the fact that I will know none of them.
No, you were getting something behind the green screen. Yeah.
In broadest terms, I had a vague idea what they were.
This is like when somebody kind of dings it in a baseball game, but then just at the end goes kapow, home runs it, and they're all like, dude.
I will bring up the first one.
Yes. Okay. I can't. I have a slate. Delay. Okay. Is up.
There we go.
Cool. Right. So if this is picture number 1, you actually did get the first kind of bit of it, because you correctly identified that it was the chassis of something. So this is picture one.
Yeah. It's a Sherman chassis by the look of it.
It is a Sherman chassis. So what do you think? So first off, if it's a Sherman, it's being used by either the US or Britain, because they were some of the biggest users of Shermans. For those who don't know, Shermans were given to everybody, like literally everybody. If you were an allied country, like the Americans, like here's some Shermans, play with them. So yes,
making them anyway.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's in the tens of thousands of Shermans. Many countries used them after the war, and many were modified, like this little thing. Well, not little; it's a Sherman. So, do you have any ideas what it could have been used for? It's obviously non-combative because it's not got a gun.
I don't know. It looks like, if I had to take a stab at it, looks like some kind of engineering vehicle.
It is, yes. It's a form of engineering vehicle. Yep.
Yeah. Trying to work out if it's purely used for towing something or might.
Towing is pretty close, and actually Vincent Shadowfriend has just made a very good observation. Looks, a boat was parked on top, which is actually that's a good hint, even a hint, clue, whatever. It is related to nauticalness. Is where I'm coming at.
It's a Sherman chassis intended for some form of engineering vehicle with a boat on top of it. So is it towing landing vessels, or is it towing some kind of
So yeah, no, you've got most of it. I'm going to give you the final clue. So this was being used at the Normandy landings. So let's piece all this together. It's an engineering vehicle.
Is it towing D.D. Shermans in?
Not D.D. Sherman, not the Shermans. No, it was the landing
vehicles.
Craft.
Yeah,
it's a recovery. Craft. Oh, I've just given it away.
It's a recovery vehicle for
So these are called beach armored recovery vehicles, or BARVs, which I love. So, a big thing people don't consider with the D-Day landings is, yay, we've landed in Normandy, huzzah! But a lot of the craft got disabled or stuck or just beached. And you can't leave these things lying around, especially when the beaches themselves were actually being used to take in supplies. As I'm sure you're aware, Lewis, the D-Day landings were not just like, hey, we got all of France back. Like, it took a bit of time to get ports necessary.
Hey, we have a tiny bit of inland France back and a logistical nightmare behind us.
Exactly. And to add to that logistical nightmare would have been disabled craft littering beaches.
Yeah.
Also, a thing that kind of gets a bit muddled with like the Allied war effort is a lot of people are like, yeah, as we were just joking, America, they've got tons of supplies, they can lose a couple boats, and it's like, not really. Like, they kind of needed as much as they could get. And remember, while France had been invaded and was being retaken, they also had to deal with Japan. So there was a lot of thought that's like, well, we better keep these supply boats because we'll probably need them for naval invasions in the east. So, you are correct. It was a Sherman. BARVs were used to recover the landing ships. I believe they may have taken DD tanks as well, DD things, which I actually wanted to include, but this was also here, and I thought this was cuter. First adorable detail about these things, they had a diver with them. Specifically a diver whose job was to jump down into deeper waters, like hitch it and pull up. And I just love the idea of him getting super lost. They're like at the Battle of Bastogne, and it's like, I am not meant to be here. Yeah, you're fit for a Sherman, not this kind of Sherman. This was the first one I wanted to go for. Is that this is a vehicle model still used today, not a Sherman chassis.
Yeah,
there was a couple of evolutions. There was, the Australians used an M3 Grant for like up until the 70s, because again, grants were another thing that the Americans gave everybody.
Yeah.
Australia had tons lying around, so they converted one to be used. But the two big ones that I could find were Britain and the Netherlands, who still have vehicles in the same vein to drive on the coasts and collect damned vehicles.
Interestingly, it was because because the top section reminded me of a modern British recovery vehicle.
Really?
I've started thinking of engineering and
Okay, so Bubble Reg has just asked a great point. I might be missing something. If it's a recovery vehicle, why is it armored? Wouldn't it only be used in a non-combat situation, or is it just they had a bunch of these spare chassis, so that's what they used? You got it right. Basically, what you'll find in a lot of World War II vehicles is that they ended up having to kind of improvise things, not necessarily because they didn't plan for it, but more because they didn't plan for it on that scale. And also, it's, as you pointed out, if you've got it, you might as well use it. Land recovery vehicles were similar. They were often the chassis of light vehicles, tanks or tankettes. You've also got to bear in mind, as we'll get into with another vehicle, that you're talking about several tons worth of metal here. So it kind of just makes sense to use a vehicle that is designed to move that much on its own power to be a tow for another one. And finally, it's not as armored as you think. I know that looks like really intimidating and tough, but if you were to put that up against like a Pack 40, it probably wouldn't have a good time because it has been pared down. I'm sure you can see that as well, Lewis, especially in the front of the chassis. Like, that's quite exposed. But it is a good question, because a lot of people would look like, why were they using tank chassis to recover vehicles? And that's the main reason. Also, tank treads are very good for beaches. That's why they wouldn't have been using trucks, because trucks would have been a nightmare to get down there. For context, I actually don't know whose Sherman that actually is, if that's British, Canadian, Australian, or American. I don't know. I couldn't
I thought
find...
you meant specifically like, oh no, that's John Smith's Sherman.
Oh right, sorry. But yes, these are still used today in both Britain and the Netherlands, and I just thought that was kind of a nice detail. I believe it's, at least for the British ones I could find, it's for marine training, like for the Marines when they do all their practice runs, they bring these little things out. But I like the Netherlands. Yeah, I do have it here as well. The Netherlands, so they use leopard chassis, but I just love the names. So they've got 4, and they're called Hercules, Samson, Goliath, and Titan. And I'm just like, oh, for goodness sake, just trundling along, because they don't look as intimidating as that. But yeah, I don't know. I quite like recovery vehicles because they are very interesting. I think people don't consider how useful they were, because fun fact, tanks are more often going to get knocked out by the elements than they are by an enemy, unless of course like you had a really, really bad day.
Yeah. Just generally the number of recoverable vehicles you have in a conflict anyway far outweighs the amount that are outright destroyed or can't be repaired in any way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you can't drag them back, then they're essentially destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. And like obviously in Hollywood we see like a tank, it blows up and there's fire gouging out of everything. But a lot of times its tracks would just get blown off, or like obviously if the crew unfortunately, or if the crew died, or the engine gave out. So yeah, recovery vehicles. And I wanted to pick something that I don't think people think about, because we think about the Normandy landings and we think about the battles, but we don't think about all the shit that they'd left behind. So yeah, but that's all I have to say about it. And see, you could, I mean, you worked out that it was a Sherman, like that's something. But yes, yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about these guys. So yeah, move on to picture 2. Excuse me.
Okay, bring that up. Do you want me to... I'll make it a little bit clearer, I think.
Oh, sorry. Is it a bit fuzzy?
Oh no, it was just because obviously I tried to fit it in the very square box that I made for a lot of very rectangular vehicles.
Yes, sorry. This is a long one.
That's a very long one, yeah.
It is. What do you think this is? This is one of the ones I thought would be fun to talk about.
Okay. Got wind-up crank at the front.
It does, yeah.
The kind of camouflage is pretty early style.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
No.
Do you want me to give you a hint?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Okay. Vincent Shadows has...
Just looking at it, it looks like some kind of troop carrier, but,
Okay.
I know you're going to try and trick me, so...
No, it's not trickery. It's very strange. It's understandable. I've only heard of this in one context. So, Vincent Shaw has actually been given some fun suggestions. They have suggested it could be an APC, so an armored personnel carrier, or it could be a mobile command center. I have to dash both of those, especially the APC.
Is it a mobile hospital?
It is a mobile something. It's something, though, that you wouldn't really think is supposed to be mobile. These are very stationary things that somebody thought, wait a minute, what if we made this very stationary, heavy thing mobile? A mobile kitchen. I love Bubble Wretch.
Bubble Wretch is you're still thinking about the taters from yesterday's Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Mobile kitchen.
Okay, I shall give not a mechanic shop. So I shall give the first hint. It is British.
Yeah.
And it is
early British camouflage.
It's a defensive structure.
A mobile pillbox? Or like
you got it. It's a mobile pillbox.
Wow. That's an idea.
It is an idea. What do you think? What context do you think they wanted to use this in? And you've kind of got a pretty good idea if you're talking about being an early war thing.
Yeah.
It is World War II, I'll say that.
Yeah. See, now, problem is I can't see the colours. Damn black and white pictures.
Yes, so fun fact, this is at the Bovington Tank Museum. This is one of the ones that does have a surviving example. It has, it's dark green and it's mottled, so it's like wooded.
So
it's not
be like British Expeditionary Forces style or defense of the mainland.
I'm going to confuse you more because I'm... Oh, sorry. No, give your suggestion. I have another hint if you're wanting it.
Go on. I just want to hear your hints as well.
The RAF were the main users of this vehicle, the RAF.
So, mobile pillboxes for airfield defense then?
Yep. Okay, so the last piece of the puzzle, when do you think they wanted to defend airfields?
I'm gonna say that it's probably France.
Not France, but no.
Belgium?
Bit closer to home.
My home
closer
or your home?
I was about to make that joke. Both of our homes, I guess.
Because France is pretty close to mine.
Yeah, no, it is.
So it's after
the fall of France.
After the fall of France, then, and for defending the airfields in a possible invasion scenario.
Yep, you got it right on the head. So this vehicle is called a Bison concrete armored lorry. Now, I actually have some facts about this because I thought this was fun. So first off, no, they were not stupid enough to think that they could drive around all like gangster style with people shooting out from them. They did expect for this to sit somewhere.
Yeah.
It was a pillbox. Obviously, though, pillboxes, are
move it somewhere and then like deflate the tires or drive it into a position and then cover it with mud, kind of thing. So it's built on the Bison truck chassis then.
Yes. So the company that made this was the inventor was a man by the name of Charles Bernard Matthews, who was the director of Concrete Limited, which I love that name. It sounds like we're Concrete Limited. In partnership with John Goodwell Ambrose, who was a Royal Engineer. Now, these guys and the company and all that obviously knew how to make concrete for pillboxes and other defences. And interestingly enough, Matthews, so the director of Concrete Limited, had another idea, which was to create spheres of concrete on top of air raid shelters. So when the bomb hit, all the energy was dissipated, removing the balls. Yeah. So, do you want to hazard a guess at how well these things did when you tried to drive them?
I'm going to go with quite badly if they're big concrete pillboxes.
Yep. They so some of them didn't start. They just immediately broke down. Some of them, my favorite quote is this. Now, where was it? Oh, I'm going to have to find it now. I think it was along the lines of... okay, wait, where is it? Yes, it's claimed to travel at normal lorry speed, which is a very polite way of going. It can move. It can move. Now, so for context to the viewers, somebody might be thinking, why make these? Obviously, the Germans were never going to invade Britain, and obviously, with our amazing 21st century goggles that we can see into the past, we know that it was a fool's errand because they didn't have enough boats. They didn't have enough, to make it work, you needed a really big, successful navy to stop the British Navy, which was the most powerful navy at the time then. So it was never going to happen. However, there was a lot of paranoia and fear, and there was the fear of paratroopers, which, and now is a bonus question, do you know which fortress? Not Cyprus, that's not yet.
Belgium?
Yes, the fortress in Belgium.
In Antwerp.
One of the most...
And Mechelen.
I've been there. One of the most... Oh, really cool.
Yeah, we had to go there on school trips.
Oh. Well, that would have been a little bit demoralizing. So this was a really powerful... This is one of the most powerful fortresses in Western Europe. Cool. And 50 guys just flew in and took it in 2 hours.
Literally just into the middle, because obviously, there's a big hole.
Yeah, which I also love the idea of the Belgians going, oh, that's just cheating. We spent all this time in concrete making this thing. Anyway,
Did you know that they could do that?
They fly now. There we go. There's the Star Wars memes for people. So the reason... You might be sitting there thinking, why do all this? So there was such a big paranoia of paratroopers flying in and taking out airfields that they wanted to have defenses. Now, the practicalities of this were ridiculous because the paratroopers would have been fucked. They would have dropped into England and gone, right, we have the airfields. We're surrounded by enemies and we have a Luger and one MG34 between us all. So, yikes. Which is why the pillboxes were made, because the idea was that they would drive them up, maybe even onto the airfield and sit and just be really annoying to the paratroopers. Because, fun fact, pillboxes, if you were to put them up against a tank, especially if the pillbox is not in the ground, wouldn't do very well. Concrete isn't designed to get, blasted at. However, as I was just joking, if you're a paratrooper, you are not going to have a shit ton of stuff. You're going to just get dropped in with what you can carry on your person. And maybe if you're lucky, they'll drop in some heavier armaments. But realistically, you're kind of on your Todd with your main weapon and a sidearm. So...
And a tetrarch at best.
Exactly. So the hope the main hope was that if any paratroopers came in, I should be calling them Fallschirmjägers. If any Fallschirmjägers came in, they would very quickly not be able to use the airfields. Now, fun fact, Bison is not really a name per se. It's just a generic name for lorries. The company just called them Bisons. And again, shockingly, they did not last long. Once the threat of invasion was gone, they very quickly were replaced and just gotten rid of. But somebody decided to preserve one, hence why the Bovington Museum kept one around. Now, I should point out, in fairness, that they were using old trucks. They didn't like take brand spanking new 1930s trucks that could have been used for the war effort. These were the old shitty things that, were being used, just rotting away somewhere. Because, final point, the reason why they were doing this as opposed to, use tanks or trucks was because they'd lost a lot of them in the Dunkirk evacuation. Because basically they'd all run away and the Germans were like, oh, great, we got all this stuff we can have. Obviously, that was not the sentiments that the Germans feel. They were probably shaking their fists going, you British! The British were like, whew, we got out of there.
Yeah. And just in general, throughout the Second World War, no one had enough trucks.
No, not at all.
At any point.
I did not know that, Vincent, that they... Because I know that Fallschirmjäger is hunter, isn't it? Like, Jäger is hunter, and Falsch is like sky, is it?
Well, Fallschirm is basically a parachute, a falling... a protection against falling.
But I like the Swedish one, falling screen hunter. I mean,
it's pretty much Fallschirm pretty much means the same.
I'd be pretty terrified of that. They're bringing the screen hunters. What the fuck are they? It's dudes and that fall out of the sky. Yeah. Oh.
And then like, no, they're falling screen hunters.
Right. Well, that's still terrifying. Right. Which I'll side
note. What kind of screens? Those big old ones?
Well, I don't want to talk too much about the Germans. Yeah. I do think it's so ridiculous that they call things like they are hunters, and you're just like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like, I don't love the British military for too much, but I do love the fact that, like, when they were designing like their self-propelled artillery, they based it off like what's it called, like religious, so
priests,
it's like it's the bishop, abbots, bishops. I'm just thinking, like, if you're like an Axis soldier, it's like they're bringing in the abbots. You're gonna be just like, wait, what the fuck? Oh yeah, they're artillery, right? Fucking British. Americans are like, we'll call them after generals.
Anyway, I presume the Jaeger is because they're light infantry, and most German back to pre-Prussian times, light infantry are Jaegers. So
yep. Yeah, that was lawyers, because they also had the Jaegers for mountaineers and like Alpine and things like that. The Alpine Jaegers or Corps.
Right.
But yes, that's the. I don't have much more to say. I trying to think as well. There's not really much else. I do love though that some bloke just was like, I'm gonna make these because and again, I don't want to talk too much for this because I think it'd be a great podcast episode. But some of the stuff the British did to ensure that if the Germans did invade, it would be really annoying for them is quite. It's a bit insane and it's a bit ridiculous and it's also a little bit British as well. Like, for example, they like changed signs around so that if they were like, okay, we need to get to Dorset. Oh boy, no, there's no signs anywhere. Shit. Does anyone have a map? No. Okay, well, we're lost. Okay, we don't know where we're going. Or then you've got on the flip side, filling like whole like fuel canisters, putting them on wheels and like pushing them so they like blew up. Yeah. And I'd love it if the two people came back like, oh, we could switch the signs around, and then another guy's like, yeah, we could fucking blow them all to Kingdom Come, and it's like, oh, we're on different wavelengths.
Yeah, that's wow. It's he's very intense.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, Bubble Reg. They painted signs black so they couldn't read them. They did a lot of stuff, which I don't think we'll have time to go into here. But yeah, crazy amounts of stuff. Oh, Vincent's mentioned the dynamite rats from the British. The British wanted to attach everything to a bomb, like every animal to a bomb. Pigeons, seagulls, dogs. Everybody was like,
I'm just imagining that from like the moment you get onto the shore, you see a crab, it blows up. You're walking on the beach, there's a seagull, it blows up. Then there's a dog looking at you from
an old lady in like a stroller. Yeah. But yes,
suddenly sets on fire and comes straight at you.
Oh yeah,
and blows up.
That's definitely the thing that people don't realize is that pretty much every country was like, oh, we're just gonna have like a horrible time for any invader. Well, that was the bison. That was definitely. Okay. I told you you'd get some weird ones.
Yeah, it's an idea. It is definitely that.
I don't think we'll ever see anything like it ever because it's just such a bad one. Well, it wasn't bad.
Why
it was
not?
Innovative.
Let's put one on tracks and see.
Yeah. Oh, it broke immediately. So this is pitch number 3. I'm very excited for pitch number 3.
It definitely has enough machine guns on it.
It does. I mean, it's got 4, I think, maybe 5.
There's probably one on the opposite side.
Oh no, it has 6. It has 6.
Oh right, one at the back as well.
One in each side, 2 facing the front, 1 in the turret, and 1 at the rear.
Okay. Feels like this is very much intended for anti-infantry.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I will. This is not a hint because I'm not sure how like big they're into the whole like memes and stuff. But this is considered the creme de la creme of meme armored fighting vehicles, like the proper Jesus Christ. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen or heard of, but it is perfect. So that's the first. I guess that's a hint. But so yeah.
You're assuming I have any knowledge of memes.
No, that's why I was like, so I'll let you guess, but if you want a hint, I have 3 prepared. Okay, the first one is, what do you think the armor is?
Well, I'm hoping it's not the sort of like golf plates it looks like it is.
Oh, that's corrugated iron. That is corrugated iron.
It is.
That is actual corrugated iron.
That's protective.
Yes, it is. So that is corrugated iron, and that is straight out of the Warhammer 40k orcs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it would be painted red just so it goes faster.
I wish I knew it was painted. I don't think I know that actually. Okay, so that's the first clue. It is made from corrugated iron, and that is a tractor base. Is the other thing. I'm not sure if you could detect that from the tracks, but that's not a tank base. That is a tractor base.
Having told me. Yes, now I can.
Okay, that's no problem then.
But before I hadn't noticed, so
that's absolutely fine.
No points
okay.
To me. So it's horrendously badly armored, intended for shooting at a bunch of people, and is put on top of a tractor.
I actually think I know where you're going with this. Do you think it's from the Soviet Union?
No, I was...
Oh, okay, good, because it isn't, but I thought that's where you were going.
I was thinking like early tank prototypes where they were like, hey, let's just use a tractor and stick some stuff on it.
That's the worst part. This is a World War II, and by the way, like early 40s World War II vehicle. 1941, I want to say. Let me double check my notes. Oh god, it might actually be 1942. Jesus.
Oh no. So who really wants
Oh no, it's 1940. It's around about the same time as
still.
the loss of France and Britain not being in the best of shapes. Okay, around about that same time.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they took most of the armor for it off of that shed in the background.
Yes. So I shall give you another hint.
Design as well.
It is very bulky. Second hint.
Who likes bulky tanks?
It is from one of the Commonwealth countries. And for those who don't know, I shall give a quick rundown. That is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and does British Raj, so India, would that count as a dominion? And South Africa. So they're all the dominions.
Yeah.
So it's one of the dominions.
Now I really, really wish I could see that tree better in the background. When in doubt, look at the environment.
Oh, that's really cool. There's a smartphone app called Colorize. Thank you, Vincent. That you can make old black and white photos colored. I will point out some of these vehicles, not this. God forbid this. This was destroyed well after the war. I didn't actually. There were some colored ones. For example, the Bison did actually have a colored version in a museum, but I was worried museum variants would have like little nameplates or something under them in the map. Also, I like the old
black and white
feel to them. I've just seen one of Bubble Reg. Sorry, is it Sir Killalot's grandfather from Robot Wars? I wish, although it's made with the same gusto of Robot Wars.
Apparently.
So it is so that you don't feel the pressure.
South Africa.
It's not South Africa. It's not South Africa.
Australia.
Very close.
New Zealand.
Yes, New Zealand. So we'll do one more. Yeah, why is a very good question. So New Zealand, I'm about to shock the world. So this is the Bob Semple Tank. So New Zealand, as I'm sure you're shocked to hear, it is. New Zealand, as I'm sure you're shocked to hear, in the 1930s and 40s, was not the industrial powerhouse that we know it today. And because of this, it relied heavily on Britain for its military armaments. However, Britain was a little bit busy in Europe with, the war. So it was unable to provide armaments for most of the Commonwealth. For example, if you don't know, Canada and South Africa, I believe, got supplied quite a bit by the Americans, didn't they?
Yeah.
I know Canada did. And I believe that's the same for Australia. Yes, it is, because Australia used like grants and stuff over like Matildas and things like that. New Zealand, however, did not have that luxury, because obviously at this point in the war, the US is either not involved, and then when they actually did get involved, they were like, oh Jesus, we have to we need to fight a war, we need to sort shit out, we can't be giving stuff to New Zealand. So they were on their own, alone, and there was the fear of invasion. You see, again, another example of hindsight. We don't really think about how gripping the fear for both Australia and New Zealand was of invasion from Japan, because, well, it never happened. And fun fact, a lot of historians agree that Japan never had any intentions of invading. At most, they just wanted to bother them, which, when you think about Australia especially, kind of makes sense, because that would have been an arseache to invade. we have Queensland, great. We've got the only really useful settlement. The rest of it's all, well, I guess there's obviously but yeah, you'd have to go around the whole continent, and that's not fun. So New Zealand wanted to defend itself. They wanted an armoured vehicle to do it. And their Prime Minister, Bob Semple, the man himself, said that he was going to provide them with an armoured vehicle. So, with some tractor bases, I believe a Diston 6-ton tractor, they Yes, no, that's where they got the box from. There is no blueprints. They did not make blueprints.
I'm pretty sure it just came out of his shed that way. That is his shed behind it.
Probably. So
like, I'll take some plates from here. Oh.
I will talk specs for this, but I think it's hilarious. So they are 6 Bren guns that are poking out of every orifice of the tank, and yes, that is corrugated plating, hoped to deflect bullets. And the crew
test that.
included 8 personnel, one of the gunner who had to lie on a mattress on top of the engine to fire his Bren gun. Because they just didn't have anything else. So there was no formal plans, no blueprints. They were working from an American postcard depicting the conversion of a tractor to a tractor tank. So it was Bob Semple and T.G. Beck, so the Christchurch District Works engineers, who were in charge of getting it. And Bob Semple was Ministry of Public Works. He was not the Prime Minister. They slapped it together. It cost £5,902, and they built 2 more, which cost $4,323, which is concerning because I'm curious where they skimmed. Maybe they understood how to make it better. I don't know. So the intention was to disperse...
Oh, we're really out of corrugated metal plates now. We'll just use one layer.
So the idea was to disperse the hulls, so the parts off the tracks, around the points they thought the Japanese would invade, and then mount them onto the tractors to use. However, when they unveiled these to the crowds of cheering people, they were ridiculed because everybody looked at this and went, no, that's not going to do shit for us. You're doolally. And the best part is Bob Semple, he buckled down and said, I don't see anyone else coming up with better ideas. That was literally what he said when the press began mocking him over this. Now, I'm about to shock you by saying this was considered a failure. Oh. However, one was sent to the Pacific in 1944. However, its armor had been stripped.
What was it sent there to do?
I just think they needed a chat. I think they just needed a base, like a tractor base to do something. Now, some people do think that if it had been given a 37mm anti-tank gun for the turret, maybe it could have been useful. However, and some people do say that corrugated iron could deflect like a bullet.
I wouldn't risk it.
No, I don't think I'd want to tank. Some other facts I know about this is apparently it couldn't shift gear while in motion. So the driver had to stop the vehicle, shift gear, and then restart the vehicle to get it going.
And then stall 4 times. And then
yeah, but here we go. Yeah, sorry. Yes, by using it was extremely heavy, unstable, restricted by tractor gearing to slow speeds, and had to stop to change gears. Also, it would cause vibrations that shook the tank apart as it went along, because it's a tractor. It's not designed for armor. And it's...
Well, to be honest, the idea of lying on a mattress on top of the engine sounds particularly uncomfortable as well. Like, it's getting a bit warm in here.
It's I love it. I just love it. It's such a... What I love most about it is that the public booed it. Like, the people who, themselves would have been very, like, again, it's difficult to put yourself into mindset, but they imagined it being invaded, and they went, no, boo. We'd rather, no, we'll do it no. Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I would have been shocked if you, this is definitely a vehicle that you've heard no. Yeah, it's an armed fighting vehicle. It has armor and it can fight.
In a way, Bob Semple can honestly say that he built a tank one day, so
Yeah.
he's got that going for him.
They did build 3 of these monsters. Yeah. So that is something. Oh god, I love it. I just love it.
The start of a cavalry wing.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Just
could you imagine strange. Like 50 of them or something?
I think the favorite.
Then all stopping as they change gear.
Oh yeah,
How do you stop and change gear and then without?
Because it wasn't because even though it's so under armored, it's far more than this tractor base could handle. So literally, the gearbox couldn't like handle having to move and like shift the gears. So you just had to stop. Oh god, it's amazing. It's just great. It's a proper because there are stories. Now this isn't going to be covered. We might cover. I don't think we'll ever cover these in like something similar to this. There are similar things like the NI tanks, which were the same concept. The Soviets would turn tractors into tanks, was a big slogan for them, and they were used in combat against the Wehrmacht. And that is the most I can say confidently, because everything else is like hearsay or propaganda. Like there's the Soviets like, yes, we drove our tractor tanks and they ran into the darkness like cowards kind of stuff. And then there's other people going, yeah, like we drove them. But the Bob Semple is we drove them. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to reiterate, we drove them.
That is the Bob Semple Tank for you folks.
You can just sort of imagine them unveiling it, and as it slowly tries to drive out, like one of the plates just falls off and dunk.
Shaking violently. They have to like shift gear. They have to stop it midway to take a turn. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Nothing is going to top it. That's the worst part about it. I wanted to save this to the end, but I also thought this was just too much fun to not do. So this is, it's just amazing. So that's us moving on to our next tank.
Yeah.
Which itself is quite silly, but I quite like it.
There we go.
That
Nye is most likely a World War I tank.
Really? How could you tell? Is it because it looks like someone tried to put their lunchbox on wheels?
Like, you know what I like? What, pray tell? Boats. I really like boats. Well, we want you to make tanks. What's a tank? It can be like a boat. No one's really come up with an idea.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah. Wow. Definitely that First World War idea of, hey, let's have all the guns on it.
Yep.
In every possible direction.
So I think we'll do the first. Oh, sorry, go. If you've got guesses, go for it.
I'll let you.
So
give
first
me a
off,
hint first.
Well, first off, because I think you will know this factoid. Which side of the First World War were the big tank users? Because this is a little bit different than what most people would expect. Which side, the Entente or the Central Powers, who used tanks the most is the question I'm asking.
I would say the Entente.
Yes. Sorry, no, I know you know this. I'm doing kind of like a thing.
I was getting worried there. I keep expecting you to spring like really difficult.
No.
Well, actually.
So a lot of people, when they think of the world wars, go, yes, Germany, tanks, big tanks, big crazy tanks. But actually, in the First World War, Germany was super not interested. Yeah, they looked at these big things, and sure,
but we have infantry tactics for that.
Yeah. And to be clear, people were freaked the fuck out when they first saw tanks. I think one of the descriptions is someone there's like a German soldier panicking, going, "They've summoned a dragon!" And these officers like, "What the fuck are you talking about? There's a fucking dragon over there, dude!" Obviously, he didn't say dude in 1916, but
I like to think he did.
But I don't know what that is in German. For context, the Germans did make, I believe they made the A7, which is a tank I might show on this at some point. But very boxy. Very boxy. But this is not this. So this is a tank. Now this tank did not see service. It isn't another experimental kind of thing. But which country do you think made it? Do you think? And the problem is, if I told you the name, you'd be like, "Oh, right, I know which country made it." So.
Is it going to be one of those difficult ones where it's a country I would never think of?
No. It is between one of the three major Entente powers. And we know how well the Russians did, so I think that narrows it down for you.
Well, it could have been Austria. I mean, they should have done something at some point. But, I'll go with France, because I'm just going with France today.
No, it is. It is
probably painted a nice sky blue as well.
Yes. It is the Front-Lafay armoured roller. Yeah. And I knew if I said Front La Filet, you'd be like, "Oh, French then, right?" French. Yeah. So this is the one that I have the least information on, because this is a proper, just very weird, out there thing. So I actually was holding back giggles because guess where Paul Frott worked before coming to tank design? in canal construction. No, canal construction. He did actually work with boats.
Okay. Well, he certainly brought some of his background with him.
Yes. Oh, yes.
In the
definitely.
design process.
So, this was made actually back in 1914. December 1st was when this was proposed. So this was very early in the war. So it's called a roller because it is based off of a road roller, which I know is a term people might not be super familiar with. Basically, what a road roller is it's like a steam roller. However, it's the one that churns up the ground for the asphalt to be laid.
Yeah.
So I wish now I had a picture of one. As I said, so it has back wheels, but then it has like a big rolly drum bit. But that actually normally has, I think it has spikes. It's also used for agriculture. It's a weird thing. And unfortunately, you can't see it. I think you can just see it on the picture. You can sort of
see the wheels, a bit.
Yeah, they're big rollers.
Big.
This is why I picked this. It's basically a steamroller that they've put on. Also, the very astute of you will notice that those guns aren't actually there. They are drawn on. Somebody drew them on.
So it is an actual picture and not a drawing, because I was I was like, is it a picture? Is it just
a picture? But the gun shields are empty. Somebody drew them on because they didn't fit them with guns yet. It did not get that far into construction, probably because people didn't really think. Very good. Oh, I love this question. How wide is it? It doesn't look particularly wide. It was not really. No, it's it was fairly wide for a vehicle, but it was not it was not as wide as most tanks are today, and even not tanks for the time, because they didn't know how to make a tank. Literally, these things were had never been made before, and it's why
in this case they went, "Hey, make a boat and put it on wheels."
Pretty much, yeah. So it wasn't crazy complicated. It had a crew of 9, so 2 mechanics, 6 gunners. So again, another 6-gun thing. If you're curious why most tanks don't have 12 guns popping out of every corner, that's actually because it makes them less efficient. if you have 12, if you have 6 gunners, that doesn't mean you have 6 people potentially shooting. It just means that wherever you're shooting at, like, it doesn't mean you can hit 6 targets. It just means the one target you're trying to hit has now 6 different people trying to hit it. Which I know sounds like great odds, but in reality, it's just better to have one big thing that you can shoot. And hopefully, if that misses, then, you know, it's less bad odds. Now, unsurprisingly, this was made by the Lafley company, because it was their roller. And it was shown to be competent at destroying barbed wire, because it is just a steam roller. So, yeah. And it could climb a 25% incline slope, which is not terrible. Yeah. Again, considering how, like, honestly, if you saw what successful World War I tanks were, they were not good at doing inclines. However, it was not very mobile. Like, really not very mobile. Like, turning was a difficulty for this thing. It really did just drive in a straight line. So, true, yep. You would be driving this big armored thing, but it's there's not much you can do with it once it's in that. Now, unfortunately, we could never have the joy of long upwards facing tanks because the design was scrapped, but it wasn't scrapped because it, you know, looked shit. It was scrapped because a lot of very strange tank designs were coming out of France. France was trying to come up with everything to break the monotony of trench warfare. You could maybe even argue as much, if not more, than Britain, especially in the early years, but bear in mind, you know, like the north of their country had been taken, so they were a little bit more eager to get the Germans off their soil faster than the British. Obviously, by 1916, the British were like, okay, we've been in this too long. We need a trench buster, which was the function of tanks at the time. Tanks were made to break through the enemy lines, which they kind of did. Yeah. Let's
when they
not
got
get into... Yeah, exactly. Now, this thing did survive, and it survived enough to be sent to the British in 1918, and it did influence British tank design, I'm told. I don't know how, but apparently it did. But it was also taken into consideration when they were designing things like the Schneider, which, if you're not familiar, were they were the first proper attempt by the French to make tanks, like the ones that were sent into battle. Yeah. Before they got the FT, and they were like, "Oh, yes, we love the FT."
Super tank.
Super tank. Super tank. Super tank that we're going to keep for way too long.
Yeah, it looks like a real tank and everything.
Exactly.
I don't know. Is this what a tank looks like? Well, it is now.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm now just reading the comments as well. Sorry, continue if you want.
One thing I would say, advancing behind it might seem like a good idea, but if you ask the Canadians in the Second World War about advancing behind tanks, they will tell you that it's not a great idea.
No,
it seems like a good idea to be protected by a big metal object, but said metal object might also decide to change course whilst you're behind it. And also or blow up or stop.
Yes, because big metal objects are easier to find than small squishy ones, and often artillery is going to be directed at big metal objects or other big metal objects that want to kill that big metal object. Also, in the First World War, if you were advancing behind a tank, it might just like stop, and you're like, oh.
And at some point, someone might get out and go, doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Also,
and it's filling with smoke, so we can go.
We're just gonna sit here. Well, somebody will come pick us up, probably. Also, the paint would chip and could become shrapnel because they didn't really know. Yeah, but that was more internal to the tank.
Yeah.
But yeah, I picked this because I just like the idea of basically a steamroller with armor placed on it. But unlike the Bob Semple, this was more of a we literally don't know how to make a tank because such a vehicle has never been conceived before.
At least they tried.
They did.
I mean, Bob Semple also tried.
He did. I'm so glad I showed you that this evening. It's so good.
Do you want me to bring up the next one?
Yep. Oh, this one's good as well. I mean, they're all good, but this is definitely a weird one.
Yeah. That's that.
So, for context, this is a mock-up. This is not the actual vehicle. Well, it is. It's what the actual vehicle will look like, but it's not to full scale. So,
well,
by the way, it's complete. I want to make that clear.
Okay, so it's meant to look like that.
It's meant to look like that. Yeah. It is.
So
that is
they're
not
either
half of it.
Trying to protect the tracks, or it's amphibious in some way, and being that it is rather closed. I mean, it's kind of cool looking, to be honest.
It is very cool looking.
If it was a sci-fi tank, you'd be like, ooh.
Yeah, it is amphibious. It is an amphibious vehicle.
Is it like American for the Pacific?
Nope, not American. Literally the exact opposite of what you're thinking. Like if the Pacific is hot and humid.
So it's Soviet. Oh yeah, it's got a BT-ish style turret.
Yeah, it's a Soviet vehicle.
But where are they using it? What for? Like Finland?
I actually don't know myself because being a mock-up, it's not.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm just trying to think what they like, what the idea behind it is, where they're thinking, oh, we definitely need something amphibious for crossing this body of water. So it's an amphibious Soviet tank from like the early 40s.
Much earlier than that.
Ooh, the 30s.
Yeah, it's a 30s design. The crazy late 30s when they wanted everything.
Then it feels like it probably could be intended for like, haha, let's invade Finland and drive over their lakes of icy water.
Possibly that could have been used. Yeah,
but
okay, let's establish another thing.
Give me a clue, Nye.
So, it is based off a vehicle that. So it's not like a DD boat. So it's not like a vehicle that had tracks that was modified to go on the water. This thing was designed to be used on water and could be used on land, but it was actually more designed for the water. It is a very strange type of. If I was to describe, it is the type of vehicle one might see in, say, a bayou or a swamp.
Oh, right. Has it got like one of those big ventilators on the back as well?
It doesn't.
On
it probably should, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay. So it's.
It is a Soviet hovercraft tank.
Yeah. Okay.
It is a tank. That's a hovercraft.
Vincent Shadowfiend got that as well.
So
that's an idea.
It's a hover tank.
It is.
So there's not much.
Like literally what you'd come up with if you were coming up with sci-fi tanks for.
Yeah.
And that is very in keeping with 1930s Soviet Union. Like, what is the crazy industrial future that we're going to build?
So I will give you as much information as I have. So this was the brainchild of a lead engineer by the name of Professor Vladimir Israelovich Likov. And this only got to mock-up stage. So to be clear, Hovercraft's been around for a while. The concept of creating something that can displace itself over water is not... exactly. And actually, Vladimir Likov was one of the guys who was like, oh yeah, no, I know how to make these. So he wanted to... Basically, this was called the L1 Hovercraft, which was designed in his laboratory, and he wanted to make an L5 attack boat as soon as possible to follow it. So the idea is that if you look at the design, it would have had a driver at the front. That's what that kind of weird shape thing there is. And it would have had a gunner in the thing. Now, that is a tank machine gun. So it was definitely more of a what is it? A degradative. I don't know. I wrote that down somewhere. But it was a two-seater, and it functioned as one would expect a hovercraft to function. So if you're familiar with the design, they would have the rotors keeping it elevated. I would assume they would have attached a kind of cushion material to it. But obviously, it's a mock-up. It doesn't have it. But yes, this is what they wanted to go with. Now, the exact reason is not known, but the Soviet High Command went, "No, we're not giving you money to make this." Nobody has the exact reason why, but I would presume because it's 1937. They looked at that and went, "No, this looks like a huge expenditure for gains that are not fully known because we're the Soviet Union."
I mean, we have a lot of land. You could have just...
So it's not super great. Some things that people do point out, because it's not super understood how it could be used, it was very thinly armored, and it was quite big, the plan, because that model is 1/4 the size.
Wow. So
so it would have been a lot bigger. Really big. And that's there's not much else to say about it. I believe it was, oh, here we go, I've got it. So it was stated to be used for swampy and sand areas as well as those with plentiful lakes and rivers. So probably
there are like pipit area, sort of like in the Ukraine, that sort of thing. Modern day Ukraine, and around the areas in front of Moscow and stuff in the suburb. But it feels unnecessary, mostly.
That's a word.
It feels largely unnecessary.
It was also I just got the stats for this. So it's 10 to 13 millimeters of steel armor. So no, it's not stopping much of anything big. Also, you'll notice not a lot of cover for the driver. No, it's just sort of got his head out, and if he doesn't keep his head down at the right time, there's also probably a machine gun going off right above his head. Unless he's driving in such a way that the machine gunner's turned round. So not the greatest. Also, it was made in an aircraft factory. However, that is not that out there because the Soviets were quite good at like shifting factory. Yeah, exactly. Now there was another hovering armored car, which was proposed much later by Pavlov Grochowski, but again, nobody bit with that. This all feels like fuel for like an alt history setting for some kind of game with hover cars and hover tanks. L5 attack boats that also hover. Exactly, yeah. Bubble Reg. Didn't think Hovercraft were that old. And you've got to bear in mind, like, there's a lot of things that were around in the 20s and 30s, but they weren't really used in a fashion that we would identify. So, for example, like 3D films, we think are something that we got in like the 50s and 60s, but they had them all the way back in the 20s. It's just people didn't really know what to do with them. Like, and advertising is another big factor, weirdly. Like, a lot of stuff that was invented just kind of sat around.
That is a lot. Like, if you don't get important investors latch on to it and promote it, then you can come up with any kind of awesome thing and no one will ever know it exists.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then Nye will put it in
you'll be lampooned by some 20-year-old on the internet, 20-something-year-old on the internet. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I that's a good example of what you just said there. I like these because I want to imagine an alternate universe where they were used. Yeah. And some
we're gonna double down on hover tanks.
And while it might seem silly, stuff like this did happen, where countries doubled down on bad ideas, and it meant when war came, they were like, "Oh, this is not good at all."
We probably could have foreseen that. Oh dear.
Yeah, exactly. But I just thought you'd like to see this. It's, as I said, there's not a lot about this because this is a mock-up, but I think it's cool. I think it's a bit funny. It's out there.
A very cool mock-up.
Yeah. Okie doke. Well, if you thought that was cool, get ready for this. I have even less about this one. This one didn't even get a mock-up.
Let me just make sure I've got the whole thing in. Like I said, it's my own fault for going with a very square screen for what.
I should have sent you these beforehand. It's my fault.
That's okay. So that's a blueprint.
It is a blueprint.
The first 5. The problem is I haven't got it out big, so I can't really read the text. Otherwise, I'd be able to tell what letters those are. But my first 5s. Is it another Soviet one?
It's not Soviet. No.
No.
Not Soviet.
Then, let's see. The old triple turret idea.
Yeah.
Is it a triple turret or is it 4 turrets? Are there 2 at the back?
Let me have a look. Oh god, did we even specify how many guns this thing had? This is
too many. It had too many guns is the only thing it says.
So it was equipped with 1 for its main gun and then 2 front hull turrets.
So 2 turrets at the front and then probably 1 at the back.
And then a main gun. 1 and 2 turrets at the front. Fun fact, the 2 turrets at the front were different models as well. So they weren't even the same.
Oh, right. Now that...
Does that ring any bells?
Yeah,
I'm
does,
surprised.
actually.
I didn't think it would. Oh, does it? Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really not going to get it, though. It's like,
I'd be very shocked if you got this, just from the blueprint.
Go on, give me a hint.
It is so this is what is referred to in nomenclature as a super... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say I may edit that previous bit out. It is
So it is referred to in military nomenclature as a super heavy tank. A thing that was only ever saw realistically in the Second World War. I guess you could say the First World War, all of their tanks were super heavies. Super heavy tanks.
Super heavy. Mostly.
Super heavy tanks are tanks that are super heavy, but specifically these are proper monster vehicles with very big guns that were never really used in any great capacity because they are just too heavy. You can't handle this much weight is the tagline I would go with. If you're curious for an example,
and there's
things
no
like
engine alive that can handle
Yes.
this much weight. And we should have thought of that beforehand.
So things like the Tiger, the Firefly was the Americans, didn't they have the Firefly Sherman?
Sherman Firefly is the British one with the 17-pounder.
That was it. They are heavy tanks, so they are more conventional. If you're curious what modern tanks are called, they are what are known as main battle tanks, or MBTs. MBTs are their own category, and the reason for this is because after World War II, people kind of realized that it made sense to make a tank that can do lots of jobs, as opposed to 3 varieties of tanks, light, medium, and heavy, that have specific jobs. Because as we all know, everything eventually congregates to simplicity. So having tiny little light tanks that drive around and scout, but get fucked over when they meet something with an actual gun, or medium tanks that can kind of just do a bit of everything, but not very well, or heavy tanks, which are really big and heavily armored, but are really slow and at risk of breaking down a lot. So a main battle tank is kind of all these 3 things in one neat bow. Quick, able to fire back, heavily armored. So that's for context.
Then
this is a super heavy.
Broke up into the NATO Warsaw Pact schism of tank design.
Yes,
smaller offensive tanks versus big bulky defensive ones.
So this is a super heavy. Now, I guess we'll.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Somebody's Vincent's made a good suggestion. The characters look Asian, which should trigger Lewis's brain, because I'm sure you're aware there were only really 2 countries that were making anything. One of them was not making super heavy tanks.
No. So it is don't want to say it though. Yeah.
Well, I'll narrow it down. So
is it?
Oh, sorry.
Chinese?
It's not Chinese. It's Japanese.
Japanese.
This is Japanese. So, for those at home,
and I think I have seen it before somewhere, but
okay. So for those at home, unfortunately, tragically, in the 40s, there were not a lot of independent Asian countries. For context, using my brain, I can only think of like Japan, China, although China was fractured between lots of different warring warlords, and obviously there was the communist China, and Thailand, which at the time was called Siam, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because they'd never been, and everyone else was a colony. So all of Indonesia was the Dutch East Indies. Britain had Malaya and at the time Burma, but it's now.
Yeah.
Oh no, is it still Burma? No. It's Burma?
Yeah, it's Burma.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
and they
France
had Malay, which became Malaysia.
Yes. Myanmar.
Singapore,
that's it.
Myanmar. Yeah.
Yes, I knew it had a modern
Myanmar.
name.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bubble Reg. And France had what is referred to as Indochina, which is
Vietnam,
Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. Yeah, those 3 countries. So the reason why I said there's only 2 is because only China and Japan were, well,
the Philippines technically existed, but they pretty much fell under American military rule. So
which they were actually going to be given their independence. Well, not given their independence.
Yeah.
So when America had knocked Spain off them, because Spain had the Philippines as a colony, when the Spanish-American War happened in 1899.
Yeah.
89? 99? 99. It was very close to the new millennium. I know that.
Yeah.
1898, maybe? I don't know. Very late 19th century. When that happened, they took sovereignty over Philippines, but it was in kind of more of a caretaker. It was basically the same way that like America watches over like Samoa and things like that, like American Samoa. So it's like we're not your boss, but
we're not in charge. But here are all these soldiers that are permanently here.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Anyway, I said all this, just so people didn't think I was like being mean. Like there was just not a lot of independent Asian countries. So this was a Japanese design. Now I don't know your experience, but I think you do know that Japanese tanks were never referred to as super heavy. It
wouldn't have been the first first thing you'd associate with Japanese tanks. No.
So to describe the relation, so this is the OI Super Heavy tank. Now this is a very mysterious tank. Very little is known about it, but I think it is interesting to talk about it because we get to talk about Japanese tanks in a kind of vague, not super specific way. So Japan's relationship with tanks was very, very weird, like weirder than any of the other major powers in World War II, because they start off on the right foot and kind of go, okay, yeah, tanks are kind of cool. We know how to use them. They even kind of use them in the same fashion as the Germans did, which led the Germans to great success in the war against France, as in keep the tanks together, don't spread them out across like all your infantry divisions, get them in one centralized division and use them like that. However, they fucked up really badly and then went, no, actually, no. We should be spreading them out as thin as they'll go. Everyone gets a tank. And then midway... sorry.
I'm gonna be critical of that, just for like... I mean, in a way, I kind of get it from their point of view, because a lot of what they were doing was attacking or invading not like mainland places, which they did have, the war with China, but
China
also
was
a lot of things
for logistics.
But also a lot of things like the Dutch Indies and the Philippines and bunches of islands where a big group of tanks isn't really you can't get them there.
That's fair. That's a very justified response.
Can use something.
Mm-hmm. No,
so,
that's totally...
I understand why they went that way.
Well, it also explains, because for those who don't know, Navy and Army, very big rivalry, like bigger than the US, like rivalry, really like hated each other, to the point where the Army had its own personal boats because the Navy was that stingy about sharing them. And you're correct in the sense that like also having small tanks made it easier to transport, which is why this monstrosity was never really made. The reason why I bring this up though is because of what happened at Khalkhin Gol. So before World War I properly kicked off, Japan and the Soviet Union were kind of having border conflicts, proxy wars, not like we're declaring war on you, more kind of a hey, no, some of our soldiers started fighting, break it up you two, this is embarrassing, but if we'd beat you, we'd beat you. And the Soviets beat the Japanese very hard, and that's why I'm saying. So I do apologize, because I recognize that I may have misinformed what I was trying to say, which is not a totally correct sentence structure. When they first started making tanks, they had a generally good idea about concentrating them, but due to mishaps in relation to the takeover of Manchukuo and kind of related conflicts like that, they had setbacks, but they misinterpreted those setbacks as how to use the tanks and what type of tanks they should be using, rather than it's China and trying to use tanks in China, especially 1930s China is not a very good idea. So come Khalkhin Gol, they kind of go, oh shit, we've fucked up. We've been making tiny little tanks that look cute in a Kinder Egg, but are not actually going to like be able to put up much of a fight against most other things. We need to start making bigger tanks. But as I'm sure you're aware, I'm sure everyone's aware, you can't completely redesign an entire engineering thing. And the reason I bring this up is because one of our last vehicles will kind of be in the vein of the very strange relationship they had with tanks and things like that.
Yeah.
So I do apologize if I've confused anyone. Please do ask questions if you're like not sure what I mean, or if you're confused by anything I'm saying. So the OI, and these are things I can say definitively. So it would have been used. It is very big. It's the prototype they wanted to end with was an 120-ton vehicle. And I should note, it initially was just going to be 100 tons, but in the 3 years of production, and so it was originally going to be 100 tons in 1940, but by 1943, they'd added an extra 20 for reasons. The reason why I mentioned the guns,
round it
so
up.
the big gun was going to be a Type 95, not a Type 95, because that's the one thing I struggle with. A Type 147mm tank gun. Wait, my notes are terrible.
That would be a very big gun.
Yes. No, sorry, they were going to use the Type 92 105mm cannon.
Yeah.
And the two little guns at the front would have been the Type 147mm tank gun, and then the other one would have been a 7.7mm machine gun. Yes, as we discussed, multi-turreted tanks, not a good idea, because it's just displacing the amount of firepower you have and making what you are shooting weaker by proxy. Now, the design of this tank was, as I said, in proposition to the defeat at Calkin Gall. So they wanted something big, but as we've just discussed, where they were fighting, they weren't going to be fighting big things. They were going to be on islands, mostly against colonial troops. However, the reason why this stuck in the consciousness until 1943 was obviously the Americans, who initially were fielding things like Grants, but then started fielding Shermans. And the Japanese went, oh, Shermans beat all of our tanks, literally all of them. For context,
if a marked difference with the battles for France.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. So the documentation for this tank is very limited. Part of this is the Japanese tradition, if you will, with projects like this. So if you don't know, a lot of Japanese big building projects were complete surprises. The most famous would be the I series of submarines. So these were some of the largest submarines ever fielded pre-nuclear submarines. And these things were so big they could have aircraft stored in them. So they could pop up, let an aircraft out, fly around. I'm just going to double check that I've not got the wrong series. I'm pretty sure it's the I series. I think I've buggered that up. Anyway, I'm going to look that up while I quickly try and talk. And when the Americans
you talk, I'll look it up.
Oh, okay, thank you. When the Americans found them, just look up carrier submarines. They're also ones I want to talk about. Anyway, when the Americans found them, they were like, "Oh God, we didn't even know you had these. Jesus Christ!" And they scuttled them to stop the Soviets having them. But yes, so what documentation does exist is very limited. The idea
was the I series.
it was the I series. Excellent. So some people say that the 120-ton prototype was made. Some say it wasn't. I would be shocked, personally, and this is my personal opinion, would be shocked if they had allowed somebody to make an 120-ton anything in mid-40s Japan with the abysmal situation they had for resources. I would be very shocked. And some people have even gone as far to say that it could have been a 140 to an 150-ton vehicle, although that is speculation at best. There are believed to be tank tracks that they were going to use in the JGSDF Fujo school in Japan. So if you don't know, that's the Japanese Defense Force. I don't know where the GS comes from, but I presume that's related to the school or the prefecture. But yes, that's all that we know about it. And yeah, this is why it's in the middle, because it's the least. These are the ones I can talk the least about. But it's a very weird concept. Why this was never going to work, though, as I'm sure, well, you pointed out so excellently, was they were going to islands, and you need boats to get to islands, and that's an 120-ton vehicle is not going to fit on a, what they call...
Yeah. Well, we'll have to drive the aircraft carrier into the island and put a ramp down.
Yeah. Oh no, and it was as well. Oh, and it was believed to carry 11 crewmen, which is not up there because obviously we are familiar with tanks that could carry far more than 11, but that's pretty high, all things considered. But yes, I believe that similar to other Navy productions, like they did things like lock up the stuff. They destroyed it before the invasion, the proposed invasion would have launched, and obviously, Operation Downfall, which never happens because A, nuclear bombs, B, Soviet Union kind of made the Japanese go, we should probably give up. But that was the OI. We are about to start talking about ones that actually I can talk about now. Don't worry. That's the weird mock-ups that never were used. From now on, they're all real things that did actually get used. So we're on to the next one.
Okay, here we go.
So, what does this look like?
American?
Close. Not American, but very close, geographically speaking.
Canadian.
It's Canadian.
Yeah.
Now,
So
I'm sure you know what...
like similar to a ram then, or...
Yep, quite similar to a ram. It is, for those, because I know you know this, it's a self-propelled anti-air gun. So for those wondering, it's designed at shooting at planes. Because it goes rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, and it's really horrible if you're a plane.
4 guns. Yeah. Well, we know it's Canadian, we know it's an anti-aircraft, but I couldn't tell you what the name of it was.
That's okay. I think I've already mentioned this, but do you know what the base is for it? Because it's the Canadian Special. Because we talked about them in relation to Shermans. Do you know the name of the Sherman made? The Shermans made in Canada. Grizzlies. They are specific ones Grizzlies. So that was Canada did have an industry capable of supporting tank production, but they used M4A1 Shermans. So they kind of like built them themselves and called them Grizzlies, and they had their own modifications, but they were by all accounts Shermans. Yeah. And also I love this fact. So it's called the Skink. And that's because Canadians have a fighting tradition of calling all their vehicles after animals. Hence why you have things like Ram and things like that, which I love. So you might be sitting there thinking, why is Nye brought this? This looks like a really conventional vehicle. Well, if I was to tell you it's an anti-aircraft vehicle designed to fight the dreaded Luftwaffe that saw service in 1945.
Oh. Okay, they're a bit late then.
A little bit late. So for those who don't know, there wasn't a lot of... Well, actually, no, sorry, not 45, 44. But for those who don't know, there weren't a lot of Luftwaffe left. Most of the aircraft that the Germans could field, especially in Northwest Europe, didn't exist anymore. Because the Allies had been very good at making sure that there were no planes in the sky. In a combination of bombing raids and also the fact that they were fighting, the Soviets to the east, the Luftwaffe was a shell of itself. They kept committing actions all the way up until the surrender, but not in anything close to what the Skink was designed for. Now I get to share my fun fact about anti-aircraft warfare that everybody doesn't bring up, which is anti-aircraft warfare is not to destroy aircraft. It's not. A lot of people get confused with this. Fighters, i.e. the planes that go buzz buzz in the sky, they're designed to destroy aircraft. But anti-aircraft vehicles are not. What an anti-aircraft vehicle is designed for is to sit there, or drive in the case of this, and when an aircraft flies near, say, an armored column or troop movements, it starts shooting and the plane goes, oh shit, well, I don't want to get hit, and flies away. Or if it is trying to do a bombing run, if he's really determined, the pilot will, have a tough time because it's trying not to get hit. And ultimately, that's the goal of anti-aircraft warfare. It's to make the pilot go, I don't want to die, so I'm going to avoid this. To be clear, you could use, say, this skink to shoot down like a BF 109, but it wasn't but... Exactly. Because remember, planes go fast. Even World War II planes go fast. And the human brain can only move so quickly. So if you're trying to calculate trajectory and things like that while you're aiming a gun with your spotter and stuff, and the plane's gone. So yeah, usually that's also why they shot so many rounds into the air, because surely if you could just hit it, you would fire one big shot. But as I said, they're fast moving, so it was more like, go away, go away. But yeah, that's the funny thing about it. They were like, the Canadians show up, they only made 3 of these, because they literally realized, oh, yeah, we're way too late. We are very late to the party, because there's just nothing left. Should note, it was proposed to be called the skink, because that's the only native lizard to Ontario is a skink. Don't ask me what the species is, because I'm not familiar.
Really Skinks wanted it to be named after a lizard?
I don't know. They name after animals, so I presume they just thought, yeah, lizard we shall pick. So it's using it's using a 20mm Polston guns. If that means anything to you, so British design.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. What I also love about it is they did use it in combat. This is one of the ones that did get shot at, because they used it at German infantry. One was brought in.
Seems like it'd be good for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. One was brought into the Nemesian Cleve area, where they were fighting against German infantry. Yeah, they were taking out pockets of German. Yeah. Sorry. Sorry, were you trying to describe the place and I was talking over you?
Oh, yeah, no, Nemi, it's in Holland.
Right. Yes, so they were using it to deal with stubborn pockets of resistance of German soldiers, which was a wash, because, the Germans were not super happy about this losing business, but they had lots of ways to kill and force enemies to surrender. So it was kind of a lot of waste of money and time building these things that were made to shoot aircraft, just to use them for infantry when they had, tanks for that. They had lots of other means. But it's interesting because there's a lot of... Exactly. But it also goes to show how unprepared, I guess you could say, a lot of people were for the end of the war. You got to bear in mind that predictions, especially when you talk about Japan, were for 46. Some even really pessimistic was 47. And that's kind of because, the war had been going on for 6 years at this point. So a lot of people did kind of shrug and go, well, guess it's going to continue. So yeah, also there's a whole thing with the Commonwealth where they didn't really want to be entirely reliant on either Britain or the US for its military supplies. So there was probably a degree of, we can cover our anti-air. And then they realized, oh, actually, we don't need to. Yeah. You covered that for us. I believe that these didn't survive. They were scrapped at some point, hence the black and white photo. But yeah, these are just a nice little weird thing that I just thought would be nice to share, because I just think it's kind of funny.
I mean, they may have been reconverted or something after the war.
Possibly, I don't know.
I've got the bottom end of a Sherman.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Very interesting.
Yes.
There you go.
See, as I said, we're kind of past the really like what the fuck were they thinking, and now we're on to like, okay, well that makes sense, even though it's very ridiculous. Now I think this next one was the one that you actually got.
Identified as being American.
Yep. So this is American, and I have a pet peeve, but I want to hear what your answer is first, because the pet peeve I have with American tanks, that's just so annoying. But what do you think it is, looking at it?
Well, looking at it, like if you based it on similar designs for, it would be some kind of either assault gun or tank hunter.
It is a form of like assault gun carrier
it's
kind
like
of
a
thing.
super heavy assault gun.
Yeah, this is a super heavy.
That's an idea that needed to be worked out.
Exactly. So
what's
why
your pet
would the
peeve?
well, no, it's the name of the tank.
Oh, right.
I'll tell you the name because it's not going to give away what it was used for, because I can ask that question. So this is the T-28 super heavy tank. It always bugs me that Americans also use the T classification because the Soviets used that, and it's. I know, but it's so confusing. I'm like, oh, a T-28, that must be a Soviet design. No, it's American. Oh. Also, because the way the Soviets did it is they did it by year. Yes, am I right with that?
Yeah.
Like T-38, T-39 kind of things. Whereas the Americans don't, to my knowledge, they don't base it by year, because this was not made in 1928.
Except
this was made in
the
1940.
T-72, but there you go.
But that was a souped up version of the T-39, wasn't it? Or T. I'm not fucking that up, am I? I am. I'm not good with names. T-34.
Yeah.
T-34. Oh god.
No, you're.
Okay,
I think you're thinking of a T-34 76.
I am. Okay, now I have two pet peeves. Just give them names, people. Just give them adorable names like Skink or Bob Semple.
And I've thought, because I was thinking later anyway, but I thought of one, the T-70.
Oh,
little tiny tank.
Yes, they are very tiny. I do like the T-70.
Yeah, but yeah, I do like it.
Fair enough.
I've always found them cool.
I do like light tanks more than these monsters, but monsters is what we've got. So, what do you think the Americans made this monster for? A very specific goal in mind.
So it's a big assault gun.
It is.
So it's intended to assault something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you would presume it would be intended to assault some kind of fortified line, I imagine.
Yes. Some may even call it a. No, there's not a clever way to put that in, because it's just someone's name is the name of the line. It's the Siegfried line.
Yeah.
So, for the people with lives that are watching, the Siegfried line was what the Germans used once nearly all of France had been retaken. So it was basically it. Now, this is the part that I always get confused on, so maybe you can help me. It wasn't the Maginot line, was it? It was the Westfall. That was it.
Yeah.
So, for context, a lot of people remember the Maginot, which is the line of defenses the French made for Alsace-Lorraine.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which, however, the Germans made their own, which was the Westwall, like literally perpendicular to that. So when in 1944 they were retreating from D-Day, well, from France being retaken, they occupied that, and then they occupied the French-Belgian border. Yes, was that the whole line?
Yeah, initially. Yeah.
Initially, yeah.
And then Luxembourg Belgian border.
Oh,
and then the
yes,
German
of
Belgian
course.
border.
Yes. They all, yeah.
But,
As they lost.
Yeah.
And this presented a problem for the Allies because the whole point of them being there was it to be an active front, and sitting there staring and losing lots of people. One comes to mind would be the Hurkton Forest, which was just a meat grinder for the Americans who were being sent there.
The
green ones.
General that loved that kind of thing. So that's what you get.
And they also, because they were attritioning so badly, they were sending in fresh-faced new soldiers because all the veterans were dead on that front, on that part of the front. Anyway, there was a big concern that they would stall. And remember, the Soviets, we're cool with them, but we don't want them to take all of Germany.
Get there first.
Yeah. Well, we want to get to our agreed thing that we decided at Yalta, Well, Yalta came after, but there was a lot of concern that the Siegfried Line would hold and that they wouldn't be able to get past. So they wanted to break it. And what's better to break it than this
big
monster?
So
this takes inspiration from the Jagdpanzers and the what was it? The Soviets had. ISUs. The Soviets also had. Was it the ISUs?
Yeah. The SUs were the open top ones, and the ISUs were the big armored ones with a giant gun on the front. So the big rimmed part is not mobile. It's not like a ball and socket joint. That's actually there for blowback. That's there so that the tank doesn't rip itself apart when it shoots. Because this is a big gun. Let me get the exact. I know I said I wouldn't do specs, but this was so for Vincent Shadow Friend who asked no turret. So no turret is necessary because the idea is it's going to be shooting at very large stationary fortified areas and blasting the crap out of them.
Yes, so it could only elevate from 19.5 degrees to -5 degrees. So it's not. It's literally going up, down. And the gun was a 105mm T5 E1 gun. So big. E1. Yeah, big gun. Very big gun. So, now, as history tells us, the Siegfried Line didn't hold, and it was broken. I actually wanted to include one of the tanks that was the first into Germany, because it actually has a name and a little bit of backstory, but I thought I'd save that for another time. Because we might do this again. I don't know. I've been having a lot of fun. What do you think? Because we were just talking about the OI. The big problem with this tank was...
Well, it definitely is going to suffer the same conventional problem that they just don't really have any engines big enough for it.
Oh, it could drive. They just couldn't get the fucker to Europe.
Oh, right.
There wasn't any boats. There weren't boats big enough to take something like this.
What could we put it on? I don't know. If only someone had created some kind of giant hovercraft tank.
In the Battle of Berlin, when a Volkssturm individual is standing there, all they see is it's a hover tank, run! The Soviet hover tanks of doom. Yes, so now this is one of the few tank designs that did actually last into the Cold War, because there was thought that they could use this to go toe-to-toe with Soviet tanks. Now, obviously, that went nowhere because the Cold War got colder and colder.
Nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it got... it went
many places, but...
not involving... Yeah, can you imagine giving this to, like, some local warfare... a proxy war. Here's this. Oh, we were just after like,
Yeah,
some,
I mean, like
some grands. It's a bit big for us. Now, another thing you'll notice, sorry, I'm a bit all over the place, but another thing you'll notice is that it doesn't have one set of tracks, it has two. That's because it's so heavy that it literally couldn't run. For context, this weighs this weighs 95 tons. So it's lighter than that OI.
Light vehicle.
Yeah, light. Yeah,
by OI standards.
I'm trying to think how much a Sherman weighs now, because I know it weighed a lot, but I don't think I think Sherman's weighed like what? I want to say 40 tons.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to look at that.
Obviously, I should definitely type in tank rather than just Sherman. Otherwise, we get old. But and as interesting as he is, not what I was looking for.
Yeah, we probably don't want to know how much he weighed. I would be unfair.
It'd have been great if I like the first thing that came up. How much? 31.5.
Yeah, so there you go. We're talking about a tank that's almost three times heavier than a standard tank.
And if you've ever been to any museums and seen a Sherman anywhere, they're still, fairly big. Right. And they look like they would weigh... You're not going to lift them on your own or with 20 people. Nope.
So, another thing, it was, again, another tank planned for the Operation Downfall, the proposed invasion, or planned invasion of Japan. Because, again, they thought they'd need it to smash all those...
bunch of Japanese defensive lines that would resist being smashed.
However, sense prevailed, and they kind of realized in the late 40s that this thing was just too big, required too much money to run and function, and was not practical. So they binned it. They just... Now, they did keep it. Again, this is another vehicle that you can see, and I believe it's at... where is it? I don't know actually what it is. It's somewhere. I believe somebody has it somewhere, but there is still a living example of it.
Chuck the places you can see these tanks in
I don't know.
YouTube.
Maybe people,
maybe
people would like to see these things.
Yeah.
But yes, it's made by the Pacific Car and Foundry. Mm-hmm. So we're on to the next tank because we're nearing the end.
Yeah,
because I only have 2 left. And actually, looking at this tank, this is actually quite similar. To the T-28. But it's still worth talking about.
I save for dramatic effect. So this looks like another fixed gun.
Yep, fixed gun.
Big armor as well.
Yeah, another big armored one.
Mm-hmm. Trying to work out who it's by though.
We've not covered this country. Oh no, we haven't. This is a country we've not done yet.
Oh no.
There's no German tanks in this because I didn't want to be a wereaboo and cover Germans. So I think that only leaves one country left, realistically.
With tanks?
Yes, with tanks. Yeah, because we've covered an American, we've covered a French, we've covered a Japanese. I guess we've not done Italian, but there's no Italians either.
Yeah.
And we've covered a Soviet.
Soviet.
Kind of just giving it away there, haven't I?
Yeah, no, well, I was just thinking, British anyway. Because of the track design. Because that's like, it's very similar to a Churchill.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
But
like
you threw me there briefly because obviously I had the Bison in mind. and you were like, oh, we haven't covered them yet. I was like, wait,
no.
what? There's another country
that's my fault. That's my fault. Yes. So this is actually, I should have lumped this together with I'm now looking at my notes, and so this is basically the British's attempt at the exact same
creating
problem.
a big assault gun.
Yep, that can fortify a fortress buster. This is the Tortoise.
Oh, yeah.
Tortoise heavy assault tank. Now, this operates a slightly different means, because the British were different that way. So rather than have like this big fuck off casement, they actually have, as you can see, little struts. This is still a big gun. This is what is this? This is a 94mm gun, an Ordnance QF 32 pounder. So still pretty beefy. But yes, has little struts to give it some support. Now, this was made for the Siegfried Line, and also if they were going to invade Japan. So there's actually really not much else to say about this.
Well, I mean, it's a 32-pound gun. That's for context, the German Firefly and the big infantry anti-tank gun, the 17-pounder, had a 17-pound gun. So a 32 is
pretty big.
Pretty big.
That's interesting. So Bubble Reg is asking for shooting tall or flying things based on the gun angle. No, what this was made for was shooting at defensive structures. I think they were going more for a kind of self-propelled artillery, so more of an arc,
so like a parabolic,
rather than
that
the American.
Very British design for the period as well.
Also, kind of
like Piats.
Defines Americans quite a bit as well. Oh yeah, Piats. Yeah, they're the. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Yes. That actually sums up American and British tank designs perfectly. The British tanks are just sitting there like, we'll shoot from far away, and the Americans are like, bring us close to the action.
And the Americans are like, no, I want the gun to be as big as possible and just stand in front of it and shoot at it.
So I guess we can use this time. So you might be wondering why super heavy tanks were as uncommon and as dead end as they were. And that is because, as we have said many times, they're super heavy. And I would like to actually, because I think this is a good place to talk about it, I'd like to talk about how bad that can be for your logistics. So not only can it not go on many boats, it can't use most bridges, it can't use most roads, it can't use most trains unless you disassemble it, like properly disassemble it. It can't use most transport recovery vehicles, unless, of course, you've got several of them willing to drag it out. It can't go off roads. It can't run for very long because it's got to use a lot of fuel.
Every 50 kilometers we have to fill it up. Okay.
The max speed of this was 12 miles an hour on road. Off road, it was 4.
Yeah.
Really should have looked at the speed for the T-28, but and yes, its operational range on road was 87 miles. So that's how far it could go. It's far, but it's not.
But by tank standards, it's not. It really isn't.
No, not at all.
Especially because, what do you drag it forward with? Instead of having to drive it everywhere.
And remember what we talked about with tanks? They're big metal things, and that makes them really, really easy to find. So if you make them bigger and metalier, they just become easier to find. So a big thing you'll notice when people talk about make big tank cannot be beaten. Well, sure, maybe it can't be beaten by another tank, but it could certainly be beaten by artillery or aircraft or just infantry that just walk up to it because it's so big and so chunky that it can't do anything. It's just sitting there. If you imagine this tortoise is sitting there and maybe it's pounding away at the Siegfried line, if some German soldiers manage to get close enough, it's not much the crew can do at that point because it's not able to run away, really.
No. Like, yeah. I think it has a single machine gun positioned on.
Possibly. I don't know if it actually was fitted with.
It might be.
And if you were to say, well,
it's not going to turn fast. You're not going to suddenly start moving it.
Exactly. And equally, I mean, obviously in warfare, tanks and infantry should be together because tanks should not be just left on their tods in the middle of nowhere. But equally, some people will say, well, if it's a super big tank, should have lots of infantry guarding it. And you're sitting there going, so you're tying down personnel to protect this thing, which is not going to be moving very quickly. So your whole group that's with it is now moving slower than its compatriots, who are now zipping right ahead of the lines. We've also got to bear in mind for all super heavies is they came from the mindset of veterans of the First World War. And yes, having very slow things with big guns to destroy fortified positions sounds great if you lived through the First World War.
Well, if you're counting gains, it's like, today we made 4 kilometers. That's insane.
Exactly.
We've basically won at this point.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
okay.
And with the British especially, they had really old school thoughts about how to.
It's a major problem at the start of the war as well.
Yeah.
Just trying to convince the higher command not to fight in these old-fashioned ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think once France fell, they kind of put the fire under them and went, Jesus, yeah, no. Yeah. Oh no, we need to actually try this. It's not like the First World War. But yeah, that's the Taurus. I also just like the name because it's just.
In that sense, it was also interesting because a lot of those sort of more forward-thinking people were sent off to North Africa with the idea of fighting the Italians there. That's it's going to be a thing, but it's not going to be the major thing. So we don't we can send them there, these weird people with their newfangled thoughts. They won't cause too much trouble, and obviously they ended up being integral to
to keeping the Suez Canal open and making sure trade was permissible.
They also got removed quite a lot.
Yep.
But there you go. That's also hindsight, so
No, that is very much so. So we have one last tank, and this is the one that's the meanest in name, and we get to talk about Japanese tanks again, because you did correctly identify this as Japanese off camera.
There you go. So this is a Japanese tankette.
It is.
And it apparently has a very mean name.
It does.
Is the also, name "I hate the Navy" or something?
No, it doesn't. It's mean. It's mean if you were doing a quiz based on having to name them. It is. I'll just tell you straight up. The Type 92 heavy armored car. Now you might be saying, but Nye, that's not a car. That's a tankette.
That's a tankette.
Well. It's because in Japan, at the time, there was a big political selectionism within the Japanese army. So tanks were the role of the infantry. Because as I said, the Japanese had this whole thing where they were like, tanks with the infantry. Gotcha, because that's where we went wrong. And it was... I think I've mixed it up. Yes, tanks were for the infantry, but... they wanted to use armored cars for the cavalry. And basically they didn't want this vehicle they'd made, which was their first indigenous tankette, to be given to the infantry. They wanted it for a cavalry. So they had to call it an armored car so they could amass it and keep it for themselves within the cavalry. Because it was designed for cavalry. And I know a lot of people will be thinking, but isn't cavalry horses? And wasn't cavalry outdated? Yeah, it is now armored cars or other light vehicles. Or tanks, yeah. No, I know. Well, because a lot of, in the Second World War, quite a few cavalry divisions were just converted to tanks. I think there's like the
that
German
was basically
leaping
the
horses.
start of
Yeah.
And also there was plenty of cavalry going around still as well.
Exactly. So, after the First World War, when people had finally decided that horses were not safe on the battlefield, even though they didn't, because there were still cavalries fighting in the Second World War, so it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer, but whatever. Not misnomer, it's not a correct fact. Anyway, semantics.
Yeah.
All the major powers in the world wanted to mechanize their cavalry. Japan was no different. And they kind of didn't really have a good time, because as we talked about, China... Oh, do you need to... No problem. Okay, well, I'll keep talking. Yeah, no problem. So China, if you don't know, at least in the parts they were fighting, have had very bad roads and very poor climates. So what a lot of Japanese military thinkers wanted to do was they wanted to integrate the ideas that they had from Europe into their style of combat. So they used things like the Cardin-Loy tankettes, which were made by Britain, and they sold like hotcakes. Like every country, both large and small, had took the Cardin-Loy tankettes at one point, because they were just these wondrous little things. Emphasis on little, because these are like quite short little things, like I'm taller than one would be. And the idea was, once they'd taken them, was to make their own tankettes to serve in the Imperial Army. Now, where the car bit comes in, because this is where the little bit of the cheekiness comes in, was that it could drive on its tracks, but it could also drive on its road wheels, which, if you notice, so if you see on the picture, this is actually a kind of a common design. If you see on the picture, I'm pointing on my screen, but pretend like I'm pointing on there. Do you notice how the little wheels on the bottom of it look like regular wheels? So the idea was that if the tracks were broken, they could just pop them off and let the tankette drive on the road wheels. These road wheels were not like super off-road though, so it was more kind of a like, hey, we're fighting. So all you missed was me talking about how they wanted to mechanize their cavalry, and they bought Cardin-Loy tankettes, which lots of countries did, because they were just like wonderful little things. So they tried using them in China, but that went very badly because road conditions were poor and the weather was not kind to them. And one of the things they tried to do with this, which was the Type 92, was they wanted to try and make it all-terrain. So that's why they were able to take it off its road wheels. And because it did that, they could technically call it an armored car, because they were like, well, it's technically it drives on wheels if we choose to let it drive on wheels. But it was, by like technical terms, a light tank or a tankette. But wink, wink, nod, nod, because the cavalry wanted it, not the general army. Now, it was better than the ones that they had bought, the foreign models, because it was more up to date. But as we've discussed, that adorable little thing is not gonna have a fun time going up against anything that the Allies were fielding.
Anything with an actual gun on it.
So if you notice the two armaments it has, they are machine guns.
Yeah.
The main armament in the actual turret is a Type 92 heavy machine gun, but the smaller one down below is a Type 97 light machine gun. Yeah, they were not gonna go well. Oh shit, side note, because I just realized this. Japanese tanks are named, so they're the type, and then they're named after the year, but not the year that was used in Western calendars, or most calendars. It was the year of the imperial calendar, which is on a completely different time scale. So that's why they use like 90s in their numbers, because it's like in the imperial calendar it was 90, the 90. I can't actually remember what the imperial calendar looked like. But yes, that's why it's like 92, 97, things like that.
Studiously try to avoid different calendars.
Yes, it can be
after learning about the French Revolution. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Now these things were also able to be amphibious to an extent. However, they kind of didn't work out as well. They were a little bit tougher than some of the other stuff they'd fielded, but realistically, they were not equipped for dealing with the Chinese countryside and kind of were plagued with lots of problems and technical faults. Now, they mostly fought within the Sino-Japanese War. They were never really exported too much outside of that, to my knowledge, and kind of were more used in the subjugation of Manchukuo and Korea and things like that, and were used by the Kwantung Army and the Manchukuo Imperial Army. I just realized I've been talking about Manchukuo and people might not know. Manchukuo is northern China. So before the Second Sino-Japanese War, which was in the 30s, 2 years before the start of the Second World War, China in the early 30s, so like 32, I want to say, invaded northern China and took it. Like, just took the whole thing. Gave it a puppet regime under the last Qing Emperor Puyi, who was a baby when China stopped being a dynasty and became a republic, but was a grown man when Japan took over in the 30s. And yeah, it was like, oh yes, see, look, we are a friendly regime. We put Puyi in charge. Ho ho ho! You better listen to us, motherfucker, because we're your boss. You don't get to do a single thing without ask us. That kind of, the usual thing that fascist governments did.
Evil regime. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You can do whatever you want so long as you do exactly what we tell you. Kind of that thing. Yes, but they never saw much service outside of skirmishes with warlords and things like that, because they would have just been turned into paper by anything with an actual gun.
Even like infantry guns would blast that to crap.
Yep. But I also love pointing out, because I just realized this has been a very nautical themed one. It did actually get fitted with things like propellers and stuff to be like a little boat one as well. But again, you can give it all these modifications you want, it's still gonna be turned into scrap.
What they really needed was like a hover module for it.
Yes.
So that they could turn it into corrugated
iron.
And corrugated iron. Yeah.
So that is the last one, and I saved that to the end because I think it was, as I say, it was the most mean, because it's very easy to see it's not a car, but they called it a car. So what was so I'll ask Chat first. Chat, what was your favourite out of the lists that you've seen? And Lewis, while Chat's typing, what was your favourite, Lewis? What did you learn the most from? We'll go with that, and then if you have a favourite.
I mean, I learned quite a lot in general today. One of my favourites is definitely the idea of a mobile pillbox. I'm sorry, that just it just seems great. But obviously, the clear favourite is hovering tanks. I said, tanks. I could just the design as well, the way it looked, you could just see an entire alternate history, sci-fi hover tank future.
Stalin had a little bit too much of the old vodka and was like, yes.
I was like, yeah, sure, go on. But
tanks.
That Chat definitely got some good ones as well.
I love what Vincent's put, the Bob Semple.
The disaster tank.
That's the Bob Semple is a fan favourite across the whole internet. It's often called the worst tank. But yeah, I quite like Bubble Reg's answer as well. I liked the retrieval tank, the beach armoured recovery vehicle. It's I quite like. I mean, I love them all because they're all these weird little stories. I think why I particularly like the utility vehicle quite a lot because it's definitely an aspect of military history people that just don't consider. They don't think about, especially people who really like big guns and shooting. They don't think about the practicalities. Like, hey, that's great and all, but those big things you're shooting, we might need to repair them. So we don't have to make, we don't have to directly replace.
We will need to repair them, probably more often than you're imagining, whilst trying to fire the big gun.
Exactly. It's I quite like the Bob Semple Tank. If I were to pick one of the ones that I actually think is, what's the word I was going to look for? One of the things that I think is the most like interesting what if is the hover tanks. I really like that whole what if of like, that, I mean, I don't think it would have gone anywhere because I think 1,000,001 things would have to go right for someone to okay that. But yeah. That is a great point, Vincent. Military history often misses the importance of clothes production as well. Yeah, that is very true. I was watching a very niche video, I'll have to share it with you at some point, of somebody talking about uniforms of the Wehrmacht. And it actually talks about how, as the war progresses and they're having worse and worse supply, they had to remove like little bits. So like the nice little lapels and stuff go, and like the what's the word I'm looking for? The like cuffs and things and all that kind of, they have to go. And it's really interesting. Like it's also like near the end, people showed up in like what they worked in, like a guy in a suit, one guy with his overcoat, like, hey. Like,
if you could all bring roughly the same coat, we'll be really happy.
No, I don't have a coat. I've just got my like my vest. Just coming that then. Okay. If you could bring guns as well, that'd be helpful. We're a bit low on them, but yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Okay, that's cool. Your wife printed them out for her history paper last year. That's very cool. Very cool.
I mean, I don't want to be too self-deprecating, but why are you listening to us instead of your wife? She should be.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's one of these things. It's why. So I guess we'll kind of segue a little bit because we're finishing off into the shilling. But it's why on my personal channel where I do history stuff, I don't focus on military history because it is very fixated on the killing and the big guns and super cool vehicle things. And I don't disagree with like the coolness of it, but I think people forget that everything we talked about, some of the things here, were made for killing and or subjugating people, and that's bad. That's fucked up. And I always want to keep that in mind. That's why I'm saying this now, that while military history is fascinating to discuss because it is a fundamental part of our history, it's also important to recognize that this was people's lives and the end of some people's lives. And I think the narrative can sometimes ignore that. It's also why I tried not to do German tanks because they get way too much attention, like way too much. Axis tanks in general do, and I just didn't really want to cover them. Oh, she's asleep. Oh well, yeah. Don't wake her up then. Don't wake her up for this.
That's a fair reason. Yeah, like
that's a totally fair reason.
We were basically, the best that remained, best option left. Like, okay.
We are the Bob Semples of military history. Yeah. But yes,
Katie's upon our corrugated iron history podcast and
mattress.
Yeah.
Mattress over engine. That was, I think, the funniest one though. You were just looking at me like.
Yeah, I was looking at it like, it can't surely be corrugated iron. It looks like corrugated iron plates, but it can't be. It can't. Why would it be?
I think for three moments straight, you put your head in your hands, like, oh.
But on the other hand, as I pointed out, Bob Semple can say that he built tank.
Yeah, that's
So,
much more than most.
which is yeah. I mean, I feel like giving it a shot now, but
how hard could it be?
yeah, well, seemingly not.
No, not at all.
I could probably
Careful you're
find
not
some
booed by your
corrugated
own
iron.
people, though.
I think I would be, and I'd probably deserve it. But he gave it a go.
He gave it a go.
And he really liked machine guns. Well, brain guns.
I think it was the only thing they had.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I think it was the only thing they had. Just
Yeah,
a brain gun.
He just really doubled down on it as well. It's like, we have brain guns.
Well,
Maybe use all the brain guns.
He hadn't been taught the lesson that more guns does not equal more death.
Yeah.
It just equals more confusion.
Just makes, people get in each other's way more. Whilst they're trying to shoot at things. Well, I think that's pretty much the end. Do you have any closing comments?
Well, I'd like to say I had a lot of fun doing this. The research for this was fun because it was a lot nicer and more chill than some of the other research I've been doing recently. And it was fun doing this. I wanted I hope this becomes a regular-ish thing, the Nye-t Natters, because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I might have to see what other stuff I can come up with. I might do some weird planes or something.
I mean, I could propose one on weird swords. If I can
weird
throw one
swords
out.
would be good. Yeah, no, I'm actually gonna list that swords. Gotta get some of them. Yeah, but then you'd be dominating there.
Yeah, well, no, if you want, I can look into that, and you can go.
Ooh,
why the hell did they make that?
No,
And
I'm
one
down.
knows. They just
I'm
decided.
down for that. Yeah. No, I'm definitely down for that. Then. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. No, I had a lot of fun as well, and
yeah.
I mean, look at them. They're fun. They're not.
They are
fun. They're fun.
No, but they're. It's fun to laugh about them.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that's where we'll end off. Oh yes, the cane sword, a sword.
A sword with a cane.
Oh, that's actually better. That's so much better. Oh no, he's drawing his sword. Wait a minute. There's a cane inside. Oh my god.
Oh, he's just going for a leisurely stroll.
Okay.
I've got a few I can think of already, actually.
Excellent. I'm excited for that. Well, I guess we should end up. I should say this was actually just meant to be a stopgap because we don't have our other two big projects, the Battle of Stalingrad and running a game in the worlds that we made, is on hold because Stalingrad needs to be set up and the world also needs to be sorted out. Yes, good night. Thank you.
Vincent.
It was a lot of fun. We're just going to be wrapping up.
Thank you for joining us.
Exactly. Thank you. So yeah, do you want to go first on the shilling or do you want me to? I'm happy with either.
I mean, I don't do anything. You know where I am. I'm here or on Garblag. So if you want to see me, go there, come here. That's about it.
Yeah.
And like Nye said, we'll probably be running GMT's Stalingrad 42 at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna try not to talk as much in that, like completely derail the game.
Of the reason why
I know, but I do want to play them because then we end up with like one session that takes 4 sessions to complete, and then that just like gets on the toes of other stuff we want to do because we now actually have different. That's the great thing right now is we now actually have different things we want to do on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like we have multiple projects we can pursue,
Yeah.
so it's really exciting.
There you go. Yeah, and then obviously the other one will be a game set in Aris.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes. So for me, I have lots of things. So I have this. I have Garblag as well. I have a D&D campaign, which I'm going to be in next Saturday, and I will probably advertise it. Oh, that's something you should be thinking in your Discord, the So Much Games Discord.
Oh yeah. Come to my Discord, the link of which will be in the YouTube video.
Yes, so check out the YouTube channel as well. See, you've got lots of stuff to think. You should be thinking for that. But yes, I've got the a D&D game, 8 people. It's still in its infancy. Not infancy as in we don't know what we're doing, because we have a whole series we've done already. But we've not been able to get many sessions because of life stuff. But hopefully next week we'll be doing something. I don't know what I'll be doing on Garblag, because I'm not in anything at the minute, because the Traveller game unfortunately has had to come to an end. Again, life stuff has come up, and it's
TTRPGs. A bunch of people is
exactly. But I'm always on Garblag for something. I'm always down to play something. And I also have my own history podcast, which covers some interesting stuff. I should have had something out today, but I will likely have something out tomorrow, because I kind of fucked up on the editing a little bit and was a bit behind. But aside from that, I don't think I've got anything. The last thing I'll say is I have a Twitter and a YouTube and all this kind of stuff. If you go to any one of those, you will find links to this, links to the other channels I'm on, and just cool people in general. And I now have a Linktree on my Twitter, which has all this stuff. So it has this, Garblag, lots of stuff. It's really cool.
Fancy. I'll probably have to look into that at some point.
It's just, where like you're supposed to put your website for Twitter.
Yeah.
It's there, but it's great because I have like all my stuff. And I was like, why didn't I think of this before? It's so much easier than tweeting.
That does sound easier.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. No. And everyone should definitely follow Nye and go check out Nye's podcasts on YouTube called Polyhister.
Yeah. Oh yes, I really should actually name it. I always presume you put like one of my details.
Well, I will do,
YouTube.
but you know.
I should say that.
If people are too lazy to scroll down, they can just go, "Oh, you just said it. I'll type it."
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's true. I should probably do
that. But it is very interesting.
If you join the SoMuchGame Discord, then I can just tell
then you can just ask Nye where things are. So that's a reason to join the SoMuchGame Discord if you want to talk to Nye.
I always feel like that actually kind of feels like a bit like a drug deal. Like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. You join the Discord, you get to find out my details. And then someone goes, wait a minute, that just serves you though. Yes. because I'm a criminal. Sorry, I just always think that's... I always want like a drug dealer so to say that midway through. Like, yes, I'm a criminal. That's what I do.
I mean,
I don't deal in drugs. I should note that. Now, kittens. Just opens a coat, tight kittens in the pockets.
International kitten trade.
Oh no, that's sad. I don't like. Oh, I made myself sad thinking of that. No.
You don't know. They may be well cared for and sent to prospective homes that are all vetted beforehand. I didn't say I think that's called bad international kitten trade.
We should probably stop. That's my
we will finish off now, otherwise we'll ramble on for a couple of hours, which you're used to from us. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to everyone who's watching this back on YouTube later. Join us on all the things that Nye has told you about that I tend to forget to tell you about. And I hope you had fun with this. If you did, let us know in the comments or join us on Discord and let us know. and let us know what you'd like to see in the future. And once again, thank you to Vincent Shadowfriend and Bubble Reg for a bunch of very interesting comments and questions.
Exactly. It's lovely.
And finally, thank you, Nye, for joining me and for organising all of this, so that I didn't really have to do anything this week other than make an overlay.
You've had a rough week.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. Anyway, exactly. Thank you. And
thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Goodbye from SoMuchGame. Stay safe and stay gaming. Bye.